Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. We have lots to discuss. A head coaching resignation that we didn't see coming, but I'll give credit to the other half on this podcast who's been saying that, Paul Maurice was in trouble. And I think from the media availability he held this morning, it was basically, I know that I'm losing this team, or they're not, they've sort of started a tune me out type of thing, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Russ, start us off the pre-show.
All right. So here's something to think about. This is a thinking version of the pre-show. So Batman, it's always taking place in Metropolis, right? And you never know where Metropolis is, but it's kind of like New York, Chicago, that kind of city.
Yeah.
LA could even be LA, but you don't know. But here's the big thing.
I think from the Christopher Nolan Batmans, you got the feeling that it was New York. But that's
the feeling I get, but it's never fully spelled out, and especially like with Gotham on TV, it was like an amalgamation of stuff. So you never know.
Batman is Gotham City. Superman is Metropolis. Metropolis, I've never.
Yeah, Gotham City. Sorry, yeah.
Right.
So here's the big question: you never see Batman fighting in the winter. You never see snow. And does the Batmobile have snow tires?
No,
that's a legit question.
The Batmobile has all-weather radials. Because
do you ever see Batman when he gets called and he's like, Commissioner Gordon, it's a blizzard. Like, you're gonna have to wait. You never see that.
Well,
or you never see, hey Robin, put on the bat snow tires.
Wait. Batman Returns.
Right.
With Danny DeVito as the Penguin. There were scenes with snow.
But did you see like big snow tires on the Batmobile?
No, but if you get if you get all-weather radials, you don't need snow tires.
The idea is, though, with a car like the Batmobile, similar to what you would say like a Corvette or something, they don't handle well in the snow.
Okay.
So you do need special tires on a car like that.
Maybe not. He's
Terry 3G says he had combat tires, so all terrain. But again, you never saw him. Terry, show me a screenshot where he's driving in the snow. I want to see it.
Yeah, Terry, if you can send that to me or post it. I don't know if you can.
Did you ever see a snowball fight between Batman and the other villains? No.
Well, no, but okay. The Batmobile in the Christopher Nolan Batmans, he's right. They're they're big, almost truck-like tires, so they don't need.
Yes, but you still didn't drive through the snow with them.
No, there was never.
Why doesn't
in those Batmans, in those three Batmans, I don't remember that there was any snow. But
there's rain. You see rain, but you never see snow.
In the Tim Burton Batmans, there was snow.
There may have been snow for a couple scenes, but you don't see the Batmobile in the snow. Yes. And how come Stately Wayne Manor is never shown with snow on it?
Now, what I'm wondering is,
it's almost like it takes place in
what I'm wondering
the summer or the fall.
Is whether Catwoman's suit was insulated, because it got awful cold.
and we'll just leave it there, Mike.
No.
I have no.
We'll leave it right there. Okay. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, December 17th, 2021.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Lagello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com.
But hold on, time out. Bill C's right. It was winter in Dark Knight Returns, but again, there wasn't Batman driving in the snow. It never seemed to snow during that winter, but it was supposedly winter, yes.
And there was snow in Batman Begins, but that was when he was in the Himalayas or wherever he was, but when he came back to Gotham, there was no snow.
There was nothing.
Yeah. So obviously Gotham is in the midst of global warming, but we won't talk about that. All right. The news comes out this morning, to the shock of many, that Paul Maurice is resigning as the head coach of the Winnipeg Jets. Winnipeg, as we were talking about yesterday, if the season ended today, would be out of the playoffs. They have a record, I'm pulling it up right now, of 13-10-5, 31 points. They're ninth place in the West in terms of their own division, as of course, NHL.com is extremely slow. Thank you very much. They're fifth place in the Central, behind Colorado by 5 points, behind St. Louis and Nashville by 6 points. So not, within the, not way out of range, but this team sort of needs to turn it around. And I saw the post game. I saw the media availability this morning, and Russ, the thing I thought was pretty astute of Maurice is that I think he had an accurate read of where things were, and it's similar to what you've been saying. This team has sort of tuned him out, and after 8 years, that's understandable.
It is, but okay. So a few things. I thought they tuned him out last year, and so why he was still allowed to sort of go through this season with the team shows that Mark Chipman is very loyal, but not a great hockey guy. He doesn't know when to pull the plug on things. So there's that. I did say, I think it was yesterday, that Maurice is going to get fired. So yes. Whether he got fired or they came out to an agreement so it doesn't cost the Jets as much money, whatever. I knew he lost the room, and I don't understand why it took them so long to know it. Good on Maurice to finally admit it, but a lot of times it's hard for a coach to admit it. And that's where I think Maurice is a class act. Because of something like that, a lot of coaches, you would never see Torts admit that, as an example. But again, those moves over the summer, I didn't like. Everybody's like, what do you mean? Their defense is upgraded. Well, is it? No, it's not really. And Mike, you and I came up off air with a very similar circumstance between Winnipeg and the Flyers, in the sense that they both tried to upgrade their defense on the fly, and it's a hard thing to do. Defense is everything in this league. Continuity on defense is everything in this league. And the teams that have it are some of the better teams in the league. Sometimes you get the overwhelmingly great offensive teams like Colorado that can combat that. But for the most part, a lot of teams try and go that way. And it hasn't worked for either one of those teams. Kev, I was just saying with Winnipeg, they're going to, I said yesterday I would expect Maurice to get fired. But what Mike and I also noticed when off air that we were talking, Winnipeg and the Flyers did the exact same thing. They both tried to fix their defense on the fly, and so far they're both failing at it.
Yeah, and Philadelphia shouldn't have failed at it. I think they had bad luck. I think Ryan Ellis's injury really sort of kind of set them back. I really would actually admire Maurice's decision here because they wanted him to stay. They weren't going to fire him. But he just said, look, they needed another voice, and he could even sense it from his way. It takes a lot of courage to admit that, like that he sensed that his time was up there. So, yeah, I really admire him for making that decision on his own, and gives them a chance to kind of take a cleansing breath. And, it's going to be one of those seasons, I think. Look at the number of changes we've had for a variety of different reasons, but changes nonetheless in the coaching and in the general manager's chair.
Yeah. The other thing I had said before you got on was Mark Chipman's incredibly loyal, but I'm not sure he's a really good hockey guy. He should have been able to see at some point here, and I know he's friends with Maurice, but again, even being friends, you got to sometimes make hard decisions. Why did it take this long for Chipman to even notice that, hey, this team's not right? Like, we're on the wrong path. We're not going to win. And he's lost the room.
Well, do you think he's lost the room? I never said
I felt like he has lost the room.
And
I think he knew it.
He said today he didn't think that, obviously.
Well, yeah, he said he thought that they were a good team. He said that they weren't really playing up to the expectations.
Right.
He thought that they were a good bunch of kids. But I think without saying that he's lost the room, I think what he essentially said was, when you hear the same message over and over, they start to tune it out.
Yeah, I think, didn't someone ask him that, whether he thought they had quit on him, and he said no.
Right.
So
no, I don't think they quit on him, but they definitely tuned him out. I mean, and that's part of losing the room, is when guys tune you out.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of a cop out that we use in the media when we're not really sure what went on. And I think that's one of those cases.
We can never be 100% sure. I do get little messages from people that were saying that there were factions inside of that Winnipeg locker room, and I believe there were. There were factions in there last year, so why wouldn't there be this year too?
Well,
yeah. I mean, I agree with you, Russ, that there's something wrong with the mix there. There's no doubt about it. So,
well, the point that was made on one of the shows that I was listening to before our show is that one of the main conduits, as somebody was saying in the chat as well, with Maurice was Blake Wheeler, and Blake Wheeler is going to be out long term with whatever injury he has that just happened a couple games ago. And with him sort of out of the picture with the team, that would have made the challenge for Maurice even more difficult. So now the question I have here is, that they've named Dave Lowry the interim coach, and he's going to be the interim coach for the rest of the season. Whether, Dave Lowry will have a significantly different message. They hope that he will, and they hope that they'll be able to turn it around under Dave Lowry. But I don't know. That's a big question. He's never been an NHL head coach.
Yeah, no, that's a fair question too. I mean, and sometimes it's hard to know whether you need an experienced coach or just kind of a caretaker, because sometimes players respond better to a caretaker coach than a guy that's going to be there long term. But sometimes the caretaker ends up, if he does a good job, the long-term coach. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with that. And, this is kind of an important decision, I think, for the Jets, because this team is capable of winning that division. They have talented players.
Well, Russ, there was some awareness on the part of Maurice, because he basically said during the press conference that he went to Kevin Cheveldayoff and Mark Chipman during the offseason and said, "Do you think I'm the right guy to carry this forward?"
Right.
So there was some say, okay, after 7 years, maybe a new voice is needed, and they
should have said no at that point.
Right, and they
should have said no.
Right, they said yes, keep going, and they thought that the changes that were made, which was bringing in Brendan Dillon in a trade from Washington and Nate Schmidt from Vancouver, would upgrade the defense and not solve all their problems, would solve the problems they have on the blue line, and they haven't. So, now they're looking for a change in direction, and that's what they hope to get out of Lowry.
Always in these situations, or I shouldn't say always. Generally, the general manager gets a pass. Like, isn't Cheveldayoff to blame for deciding which defenseman to bring in? Because it hasn't worked. So,
well, but here's the thing: because of everything that's complicated Cheveldayoff this year with all that he's been through, are they just going to ride out this season and then fire Cheveldayoff and let somebody else hire a new coach? Do you think that might be what the plan is?
Yeah, interesting thought. Yeah.
It's possible, but Russ, I mean, honestly, you had, if it was in your mind, if you were ownership and it was in your mind to fire Cheveldayoff, wouldn't you have taken the opportunity when you had it earlier this season when he was embroiled in this whole Chicago situation?
No, because he's friends with him too. So no, but he's he's almost like friends with him too. So he wanted to make the situation better, make it look better. And then, after the season, if he says, now things aren't going right, it doesn't look as bad as if he did it then. Everybody would have given him a pass then, but he personally didn't want to do that. So, I get it from that standpoint, but I think they have to change. If nothing else, Kev, we could all agree this is a woefully underperforming team in the sense that the amount of talent that they put together in the last few years, they haven't really performed enough.
Yeah, I don't know whether I would call it woefully underperforming, but I think they're better than they've shown.
Right.
No doubt about it. And I still think it's harder. Like it's funny just about, and at least I get this way. Like I looked at the Lane Vigneault situation, and I thought he deserved to get fired. I wasn't so sure about Maurice. He's been a good coach for a long time. Everywhere Vigneault's been, there's been kind of issues about whether he had sort of worn out his welcome or whether he was the right fit, his coaching style and so forth. But Maurice is such a professional. That's one of the issues in Winnipeg. Like if your ownership, like Paul Maurice is a great coach to have around, just in terms of, he shows real well, in the community, he's a great communicator. There's a lot of positives to him. So, you look for reasons to keep him rather than looking for reasons to get rid of him. And, that can hurt you, as you pointed out, if you get too close to him, then you can't make that, what's generally considered to be a, logical decision. When the team's going bad, you bring in a new voice.
Now, we could rename this show the COVID Chronicles rather than the Hockey Buzzcast, based on what road we're going to go down next. Looking at some of the games last night, Kev, it was a little bit surprising, and it came down fairly, just before, I think an hour or an hour and a half before the puck drop, that the Canadians were going to play in front of no fans.
Yeah.
And it was a little bizarre to see the Bell Center empty after, obviously it's not a unique experience because we saw that, in the bubble, and we saw that all last year. But after having fans in the stands, to see it again, sort of is where we're at right now. The Canadians win the game 3-2, but I think that's really a secondary story as opposed to the fact that the game was played in front of no fans. And I heard this morning that there were some people in the NHL that were mad that the game wasn't postponed, because if it's postponed till later in the year when they can have fans in there, that's money, that's revenue. And obviously revenue is king right now.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, the cost of for the league is significant if this is going to be for an extended period of time. And, I watched the news this morning, and, I heard a doctor say that Omicron is so easily spread that if you're not vaccinated, you're going to get it. It is going to find you. Well, I mean, that's certainly the case. Even if you are vaccinated, it seems to, find you. So, and I've, in my own family life, I have one grandchild that had to quarantine as of 2 days ago, and today I was told that another of my 5 grandchildren, and we're all gathering for Christmas, and now he'll have to go through, I think it's his 5th, 5th or 6th, must be 6th now, 5th test about whether or not he has it or not. So that's the way life is. We all complain about the cesspool sometimes that social media can be, but I thought, I don't remember who said it now, but it was a really apt description that yesterday felt a lot like March 11th, 2020, with so many things happening sequentially and leading us to the thought that maybe we will have a cessation of the league. And, obviously we've had Cousins say that he felt, it's time for a pause. And, I saw the debate on it. Some people just think, well, you might as well just keep plowing through because we're going to deal with this forever. And then other people saying, yeah, but if we just shut down for 5 or 6, we can clean up this situation where everybody can split apart, and we won't be reinfecting everyone. We won't have another Calgary Flames situation, at least not for a while, because, everybody will go their separate ways. But, as soon as they get back together, we could see it again, just because the virus is, just seems to be so transmissible. And then we also now hearing in terms of the Olympics, where I think there are more players that have concerns about what's going to happen once they get China, and if they test positive over there. So now we'll have to see how that will play out. Although I have heard in the last 24 hours that one of the thoughts is, we'll just say we're going, and the players that want to go will go. I mean, they have pools of 55 players, so even if half of them didn't want to go, you would still be able to put us send a team over there. So,
Russ, what do you think of I mean, I know we were talking back and forth yesterday about, whether there'd be a pause or not. And I looked at the schedule, and we're 5 days away from the Christmas break, the 23rd being 6 days away, the 23rd being the last day before the 3-day Christmas break. I get the feeling, based on what, they said that Montreal-Boston was postponed, but that Montreal, I guess their next game is Monday. That one is not postponed, and I believe that one is in New York. So they're going to continue to play on, and maybe that they're going to try to get to that break, the Christmas break, as a 3-day, as sort of a mini pause to see if they can get things under, just plow through and get under control.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not in favor of plowing through if it continues at this rate, like over the weekend. But if they were to limp into the Christmas break, what I would do is extend the Christmas break and pause it right up to the Winter Classic and let that start the season again. That's exactly the way I would do it, because I really feel like these teams need to get it through their teams, let it run through, let it run its course. And I think that might be enough time to do it, because the issue, it's a complicated issue, and I've been talking with people about it. Like Kevin has been saying, and Kevin's really got a great handle on this. Yeah, you probably, or most will be asymptomatic, but yeah, you're going to have a positive test, but you still can't take the chance that one or two guys is really going to be affected, even though most of your team looks healthy and doesn't have symptoms. So you have to treat it this way, because you have to go with an abundance of caution. And I just feel like just the way things are going right now, it almost seems like it's impossible for the season to not have a pause.
Well, I see. The thing is, it's what the purpose of the pause is. If the purpose of the pause is like, okay, get through this, make sure everybody is negative, make sure anybody who's sick is get them able to get back. The problem is what Kevin said. Okay, everybody is negative now. Everybody is through it. And then you get back together, and the way this current variant, Omicron variant, how transmissible and how virulent it is. Now, I have not heard many stories of any players being seriously ill. It's been very mild or asymptomatic. I'm not saying go the way of the NFL and just ignoring it, but I'm also saying I don't know whether the pause really accomplishes anything, simply because when they're back together again, more players are going to get sick. So I think what they're going to have to do is, players who get tested, who test positive, they're going to have to isolate, they're going to have to quarantine, and the team is going to have to continue on with the players that are negative. And that's
I think that's what you do when you come back. But I think you could shrink the numbers for sure if everybody quarantines at home and every place gets super cleaned again. I think you would have a decrease.
Yeah,
but it could come back, sure.
And the problem here is, Kevin, is that it's been proven. The CDC has said, even if you're vaccinated, even if you're double vaccinated, even if you're triple vaccinated, you can carry the virus.
Yeah.
Oh, you can be asymptomatic. You cannot even, maybe not even have it, but you can carry it, and other people are going to get it.
Yeah. I think there is one benefit, though, to pausing the season. That would be the sort of mental break. There's a high level of frustration in the teams now. You see it in everybody's quotes, and the fact that Cousins felt a need to go on social media and bare his soul about the need for a pause, because people have to live with this every day. They're going now, they're getting tested regularly. They're worried about it. I mean, Dylan Larkin said after last night's game that you're thinking about that. Christmas is coming up. Am I going to test positive? Am I going to not be able to go to my family's Christmas? If I do get it, should I not be spending time with relatives right now. All of those are issues. And I think if you gave everyone a few days away from the rink, it would allow everyone, at least some few days of kind of relief from this, and maybe to give them at least a better sort of outlook going into the new year, kind of a cleansing breath here.
Well,
and restart.
The interesting thing was apparently last night with the Nashville, Colorado game, right before the game, Makar and Darcy Kemper, I believe, were yanked, tested positive, and were placed in the COVID protocol. And the Colorado team had a vote of whether to play the game or not play the game, and they voted to play the game because they were in Nashville already. So why the hell not? It's like, why not? Why not play? And I think that, the thing is, once you pause the season, I honestly believe this, once you pause the season, the Olympics are done. I mean, I know Gary Bettman will not want to break any word that was promised in the CBA, but if they pause the season and now you're going to have to make up 40, 50, 60 games, when are you going to do that? You're not going to cancel them. You're going to have to play them. What I said yesterday, I heard other report. I heard Eric Duhatschek and Mike Harrington on the Bob McCowan's podcast say the same thing that I said yesterday, which was, okay, if the players want to go to the Olympics, fine. Then the teams are going to have to make up the games with the players already gone. So Washington will have to play games without Ovechkin and Backstrom and all those players, and that might be the only solution. I mean, you're playing without star players right now, so what's the difference if you're playing without them during the Olympic break if you have building availabilities available to you?
Well, I would still say what I said yesterday. You'd have to check and see if that's allowable, number one. Yeah. But I also think I don't think it's an absolute that there's be no Olympics. I think you just outlined the scenario in which they could go to the Olympics and get back on schedule. So there's always some gray there, and I do think that there is some sincerity with Gary Bettman with regard to not wanting to start a war with players. I think he would prefer I think he would prefer that if they're going to reach this decision, they do it and not him, because he did cut this deal, and he doesn't want to go into the next negotiation with them and them say, well, you promised us this and then didn't deliver. So I do think he'll do what he can to try to accommodate them if they want to go, but his number one priority always has to be the league. If they ascertain that it's impossible to play 82 games and go to the Olympics, then he might call down Laferre, and it's in the players' best interest to play 82 games as well for financial reasons. So,
the one gray area might hold on. There's one possible gray area. We know that there's going to be like that 5-week quarantine if you test positive there. I do kind of wonder if the IOC would say, you know what, as long as you test negative, you can get on the plane, and we'll worry about the rest when you're there. I wonder if they'll do away with the 24-hour the two negative tests, Kev, in that 48-hour period. Maybe they would do away with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I don't think that they think that it's absolute certainty that it's 5 weeks. I think they're still working on that. I mean,
that's the other thing in play then.
Yeah, that's the rule. I mean, that's the rule. I mean, that's what they were told. But I think everybody, and maybe they should take into account we're talking with China, whose rules are usually their rules. But they're thinking, well, surely they're not going to, keep our athletes there when we can load them up in a plane and take them home. So
please don't call me Shirley.
Yeah.
Now, interesting game last night. The Vegas Golden Knights and the New Jersey Devils. It got a little heated. Zach Whitecloud hit Jack Hughes in the game when Hughes was sort of crossing, doing what forwards now do that they didn't do in the 90s because they get their head knocked off by somebody like Scott Stevens or Brian Marchment. He crossed laterally across the blue line or across center ice and got walloped by White Cloud. And at the end of the game, Lindy Ruff put out Mason Gersten, Kevin Ball, and a couple other of his big forwards, and went after Pietrangelo and a couple other players. And it got a little ugly. Apparently, Robin Leonard tried to cup check Ball, which that's sort of funny. But it got a little out of hand. And at the end after the game, Jonathan Marchessault said this, and I quote: "I think it was some BS." I cleaned that up there. He was just probably mad. He, being Ruff, was just probably mad that Hughes got hit and there's nothing happened. That nothing happened in the moment. At the end of the day, that guy is the one who gave up that fourth goal. So I think it's kind of gutless. You put a defenseman, a tough guy, to line up at forward when there's 25 seconds left. That's shitty, but that's what those older veteran coaches do sometimes. Okay. This is the thing. This is normal standard operating procedure. I think for most coaches. So I don't know if it's just the veteran guys who, when one of your star players gets hit, they're just going to say, "Oh, that's okay." No, they're going to respond. I don't see.
Yeah, they don't care. They don't care if Gersten gets suspended. They don't care.
Yeah, I don't see. I don't get where Marchessault is coming from. What league is he playing in? This has been standard operating procedure for decades. And if you're a player, you have to, okay. I know the way the game is played right now, and they think that they're invincible, Kev. But a player cannot do that without fear of maybe getting. I mean, part of playing defense in this league is controlling the neutral zone and not allowing players to cross all over the place. And if they get hit, that's what you get.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we clearly don't believe that in the NHL because we got lots of rules that protects you when you do that. So I don't think, but it has become the rule that whether a hit is legal or not, if you hit some player on the other team, you're going to have you face the possibility and the likelihood of someone coming after you. We don't even accept legal hits anymore. Maybe we never did. I don't know. Right. I don't kind of remember how that.
If you do a hip check now, the other team gets incensed, Kev.
Well, any kind of hit, really any kind of hit.
Well, I mean, look at the shitstorm that came up in the last couple of weeks, Russ, with the two hits that Trouba had. Right. I mean, they were clean hits. They were not dirty. Right. They were not head hits. They were clean checks. They were legal checks, and everybody got into an uproar. And okay, I get it. I'm 50. I'm 54 years old. I grew up watching hockey in the 70s and the 80s. So I remember bench clearing brawls with regularity and, Scott Stevens laying out Eric Lindros. So none of this is not, I mean, this seems like very tame in comparison, but I know that the NHL doesn't want their stars hurt. And that's why they're regulating things the way that they are. But I don't think it can completely disappear in this league because I think that's how you win is, you control the center of the ice and you put a little fear in the opposition sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that. I mean, I think that's all part of it. Although there is a measure of intimidation that comes just from, size alone. We do. Like if you use your size effectively, you can be very intimidating without, laying on major hits. But yeah, I mean, that one of the problems we had with trying to be decent human beings and trying to protect people from head injuries is we took most of the hitting out of the game, and there's still room in this sport for hitting. There should be anyway. I really have sympathy for the hitters in the league that are trying to figure out what they can do and what they can't do, and because it's really kind of difficult. And
it is difficult.
I think Marchessault kind of summed it up. You kind of got to look at who the coach is on the other team to kind of know, what's going to happen if there's any hits laid out. And I mean, it's like I see your point. Like, you still want the game to be tough and physical, but on the other hand, you also don't want to see. It's funny to me that so many people will say, I want to be able to, like you said, if you get your head down, you get what you deserve. But I don't want anybody to get hurt. Right. Well, you can't really have it both ways, unfortunately. So there's got to be a middle ground there. So
Mike Rupp, a former Devil who I believe is still doing work for NHL Network, tweeted out, says, "I absolutely love Jack Hughes as a player. The Devils and him need to break down tape, and he needs to learn the dangerous areas of the ice. He is taking way too many hits in his young career. I believe that a lot of that is due to 86 being Hughes playing against his peers in the U.S. National Development Program, then jumping into the NHL. No junior, no college, hasn't had to deal with older, stronger players until the show. This can be taught and it needs to be ASAP." I think there's something to that, Russ. I do.
No, I think it's antiquated. I've listened to Mike Rupp before, and I feel he's antiquated. He didn't say that about Austin Matthews, right? I know Matthews played the one season in Europe, but he didn't say that about Austin Matthews. He didn't say it about, there's been other players that have made the jump. Roslovic made the jump after just 1 year in college. He played with the NTDP. I mean,
the only thing I can say is Austin Matthews was 6'2" and 210 pounds when he was 18 years old, and we know that Jack Hughes is a smaller player. Now, he's
what Hughes is forgetting, what Rupp is forgetting is elusiveness. Hughes does have elusiveness. There are players in this league that have elusiveness. Patrick Kane is not a big guy, but we don't see Patrick Kane getting plastered very often. So that's what he should be talking about, Mike Rupp, not talking about, rock'em sock'em robots. You need to be tougher and smarter and not do that. I don't think that's the issue here.
I know that we discussed, Mitch Marner in 2015 before the draft and how slight he was. And, he's been able to survive in the NHL because of that elusiveness, because of that sort of sixth sense of avoiding contact. He's not.
One other thought, Mike?
Yep.
Sorry, and Vince reminded me of this. The NCDP plays against college teams. So, it's like, who does, Mike think they're playing against?
I think to make a blanket statement is wrong. I think with and this has always been the case, it's a case-by-case basis with players. You have to factor in, how fast they are, how elusive, as Russ brought up, how strong they are, the fact whether they, in Hughes' case, he played against, college teams, or whether he didn't. So, there's just way too many factors. I think you're always setting yourself up for criticism if you make a sort of a blanket statement, because not all players, as Mike just pointed out, Austin Matthews is a completely different player than Hughes in terms of his readiness for the game. He was just much bigger than Hughes, and probably, and was actually much more experienced. It's not the world's most physical league, but the Swiss league, he was playing against men. So that gives you gives you more preparedness than where Hughes was coming from.
And honestly, Austin Matthews, in spite of his size, has never really used his size as not as a weapon, but only until this year. Now he's starting to check more. He's a stronger kid. He's more confident in his physicality. And I don't know, I think Hughes is a different type of player, Russ. I don't know if he'll ever be able to do that because he's not going to be 6'2", but he's extremely intelligent on the ice, and he is elusive. But I think the one thing that Rupp is right about is he has to avoid the dangerous areas of the ice where he could get hurt. That's part of having that sixth sense.
That's any player in the league. It doesn't matter what size you are for that. I think what Rupp is not taking into account is Jack Hughes has people that are just after him.
Right.
He's a player that is a big focus for that team. He's a player that gets behind the defense, and at some point he's going to be putting in more goals, so guys want to rub him out. That's what you have to talk about. It's not so much the other stuff, and that's where I think Rupp needs to focus on, are the guys that want to take him out.
Yeah. Now, just touching on a couple other games here before I wanted to talk about the Eastern Conference here, but the Islanders finally get off the schneid, beat the Bruins, and obviously a COVID weakened Bruins team 3-1 without Bergeron, without Marchand. So you have to factor that in. Kyle Clutterbuck with a couple goals there, Russ. But I know there was an interview with Lou Lamoriello. I think it was Pierre LeBrun that had it. And we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but I just don't know if the Islanders can limit teams to a goal, then they have a chance of getting back into this. If they play like suffocating defense and get decent offense, maybe they have a chance. I just don't know whether they can turn it around quickly enough.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a good win. The other team was weakened. Clutterbuck getting goals is a big thing for them. We'll see. They've got to string some together here. Just getting your one-offs is not going to help this team. And so far, we haven't seen them string together any kind of winning streak. So I can't go overboard and say maybe this is the start. I just have to sit back and see.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly what they need. Is they need some stretch where they win 7 out of 8 or 8 out of 9 or something like that. And if they could do that, they might be able to climb back in it. And it will help them that metropolitan teams will beat each other. So that it's not inconceivable that you'll have a 10-game segment where 3 or 4 of the teams are roughly 5-5, and if they can win 7 or 8 games during that stretch when there's 3 or 4 teams that are 5-5, then they can start to climb out of their the hole that they've dug for themselves.
Now, in the greatest turnaround in hockey history, the Vancouver Canucks have won their 6th game in a row under Bruce Boudreau. They go to San Jose and win 5-2. And Brock Besser, Russ, had 2 assists in the last 12 games before Travis Green was fired. And now last night scored 2 goals. Now he has 4 goals and 6 points in the 6 games under Bruce. So, I mean, is it
Bruce is good.
Yeah, Bruce can coach, and you're playing for your grandfather. You feel good about it, So it's great.
This wasn't a team without talent, though.
No,
like we all picked them for the playoffs. So now that they have a guy that's sort of like whether there were shackles on him or just has a different way of handling them in the locker room, they like it, and now they're playing to their talent level. Like, I mean, we can't be shocked at this. And we know that Boudreau is a good coach, so we're not shocked that he's getting good results. I think there are some people out there that are sort of like looking at it with a jaundiced eye, like it's not going to last. But it's like, why won't it last? This is a talented team. They have great goaltending. This is just a team that was underperforming offensively. And now if they're finally getting their offense together and a guy like Besser is going to open it up and Pettersson's going to open it up, they're going to score goals.
Yeah, I just was looking to see if it was Halak or if it was Demko in goal yesterday. I think it was Demko, and because Halak was in the game before. But yeah, if they get it was Demko 34 saves on 36 shots. Yeah, I mean they get that kind of, and we know in the past he has been a difference maker when he gets hot. He can carry a team for a while. So yeah.
And this conversation started with a accurate statement by Russ. Bruce Boudreau is a good coach.
Yes.
He really is. And, he's also old school 1980s style coach where his team score. He gets them going. He's not afraid to have his team score some goals. So, I think that was the right choice. I like Bruce as a coach. I think, you've heard my speech before about Game 7s. We say all the time they're a flip of the coin, but then if you lose a bunch of them, what we say is you can't win. So apparently it's not lucky when it has to do with whether the coach has an impact or not.
Now it's a hard thing, and it's always debatable, Kev. I mean, Joe Torre was the big guy in baseball that had the same thing hanging on him for a long time. So, I mean, it's always debatable.
Yeah.
Until you went to the sainted Yankees, and then he won 3 Game 7.
Who sold his soul to the devil?
Okay. I saw this, and here's here's where like little statistics are sort of misleading. In doing some research for the show, they said, well, the Eastern Conference must be so much better than the West because 6 of the 7, the top 6 of the top 7 teams in the league are from the Eastern Conference. And if you look at the Eastern Conference standings, there are 6 teams with 40 points or more. Yeah, well, the problem is that 3 or 4 of the worst teams in the league are also in the Eastern Conference, and that's why those teams have so many points.
Yeah,
well, that's always
that was my first thought.
Yeah, I don't know why anybody would think that. The reason that you have a bunch of teams is because you need teams to beat up on in the bottom. That's all. That's been the case for time immemorial. So
yeah, but in looking at the East, like we looked at the West yesterday, I shouldn't be surprised, Kev. But no Kucherov, no Braden Point, no problem. It's Tampa Bay is tied with Toronto for the top spot in the Atlantic. No problems. Vasilevsky's, he's the best goalie in the league, and Stamkos is playing well, and they're getting some help from the young guys that they brought up through the organization. And other guys like Cirelli have pick up the slack for the players that are missing. I mean, this is just a deep, talented organization, and it's always next man up with them.
Well, I said this is one of my 25 thoughts today, but I know their depth is eroded. I know they aren't likely to win 3 in a row just by historical comparison. Yet I look at that team and they're still 5th in the league in terms of their overall record. Just as you mentioned, they still have the best left side defense in the game. They still have Vasilevsky. They get enough goals. Both their offense and their defense rank in the top 10. They're getting it done. They've got major injuries. And and I know that at some point before now in March, Brisebois is going to acquire a right shot defenseman that will make that defense even stronger. Yeah. And he might pick up a forward too. That's hard to play against. The injuries have done is they've now given him a little bit of long-term cap space relief that I'm sure he'll be able to utilize at some point.
Yeah, I mean, these guys here, it's funky, Taylor Radish, Ross Colton, Kachuk, Matthew Joseph. I mean, Radish was a 2016 draft pick. They've allowed most of these guys, they've allowed these players to play 2 or 3 years down in the American Hockey League in Syracuse. I've seen them play. They're all good, and they've been fighting and scratching and clawing to get to the NHL, and only now are they getting there because the organization is so deep. It's like, Kev, it's like the Detroit Red Wings a decade or so ago when you had all those guys down in Grand Rapids and they let them overcook, but they let them overcook because there were no openings at the NHL.
Right. Yeah, I remember talking to one of their pro scouts and they had lost a player who, just ran out of options. And he said, we lost that player before we even knew whether he could play because he had never really been up long enough. And that is what happened. I swear Radish seems like he's been there a decade.
Yeah,
that's how it feels.
Yeah,
I know you said 2016, but that's still, we're playing 21-22. That's 6 years.
Yeah.
So, he's been there a long time, but that's what happened. And Murray is a good talent evaluator, and they're always well stocked. And just as one of our viewers mentioned, all those guys, they seem to always find those guys and have them ready to go. And those role players are part of why they're so effective. But I think they have a real chance. They're not the favorites.
No.
But they're still a quality team. And, we don't mention it up, but they also, in addition to having a quality general manager and great defense and goaltending and quality offense, they also have a great coach. I think John Cooper does a tremendous job with that team.
Yeah, we always do talk about their drafting and player development are great, but part of what makes like Murray really good is when he's drafting, he's not really going best player available. They're looking for best Tampa Bay Lightning player, and there's not a lot of teams in the league that do that. And if you are that good where you could trust your coaching, like with Cooper and in the AHL, and know that a lot of these guys that you're picking are going to good programs in college or really good teams in the OHL or really good teams in the KHL, you can do this. And they kind of have it down to a science. Look, I think they're going to, have some struggles in the playoffs, but to get to the playoffs, they've still got it all figured out. We should also say, Steve Stamkos got his 900th point, and he's the 118th guy to do it. Only him and St. Louis have gotten that or more as Tampa Bay Lightning. But the fact that he's the 118th guy to do it pretty much cements his Hall of Fame future status. That's a guarantee at this point.
I'm just checking something here, that somebody is reporting in the chat just to make sure nobody's pulling my leg.
I thought it was an ice cream truck. Okay.
No, that was
my clock.
No, I'm going to yell ice cream.
Okay. Frank Cervalli is reporting. He says NHL sources are now saying that the Colorado Avalanche, the Calgary Flames, and the Florida Panthers will be shut down until after the Christmas break. So is this the beginning of everybody being shut down, or is this?
It's part of it.
I don't. If they were going to do everyone, I think they would do everyone. They wouldn't just name 3 teams. So right. I think they're going to try to play as many games as they can.
Right. They're going to do this on a case-by-case basis. Now, like Vancouver, they had a bunch of negative tests. They had no new positives. They went to San Jose, and now they're coming back home to play Toronto on Saturday. Toronto had nobody all year, and then all of a sudden, in the last hour, it's reported that Alex Kerfoot and John Tavares are in COVID protocol. So, no team is gonna remain unscathed here. But yeah, I think you're right, Kev. I think they're doing it on a case by case basis, and if teams can get through the rest of the games, most of them are 2 or 3 games until the 23rd, then they'll play those games, because at a certain point you're going to be oversaturated with games that you have to make up, and then when are you going to make them up? They don't want to cancel games. They postpone them.
No, listen, I think in theory you're right, Mike, but I also think we're going to lose 2 or 3 teams every couple of days. I think that's why, and that's why I said what I said, because it just seems like this is the way it's going.
Yeah, but I agree with you, Russ, that's possible, but I think to wait and see what happens is the proper course, because the more games you can get in, the less you got to make up. So. Yeah, it's no problem to do it this way, and if it works out that you end up having to shut down the league, so be it.
Now, just touching on the East again before we end the show, Carolina leading the Metro with 41 points. The thing that stands out here, Kev, is 12 wins, league's best record on the road, 12-4-1. Usually teams, they're very respectable at home, 8-3, but 12 wins on the road. They're getting really good goaltending from Russ's favorite, Freddie Anderson,
regular season Freddie,
and it doesn't seem like they're really missing Dougie Hamilton that much on defense.
Well, it's hard to believe it, and one of the reasons they're not missing Dougie Hamilton is Anthony D'Angelo, who has really stepped up, been better than anyone anticipated, and has really given them a lift offensively. And, that's what they needed. Dougie Hamilton gave that team a lift offensively, and D'Angelo has filled that role extremely well. And, they got a lot going on. That's a big defense. They got some physical defensemen. I watched them play last night on television, and they're very effective.
Well, they got really helped by Edmonton, a team that shouldn't be trading defensemen, giving them Ethan Bear. Not that Warren Fogel's not a bad player, but why?
But that was a steal.
That was just a puzzling deal. I don't get why Ken Holland makes that deal. I mean, I know that, I was just writing something, and if you look at Edmonton, 65% of their goals have come from McDavid, Draisaitl, Puljujärvi, and Zach Hyman. so the rest of their forwards, their bottom six is virtually non-existent. So I know you wanted to get some forward depth, but not at the cost of another area that's just brutal for you, which has been their defense. So I don't.
Yeah, I'll say this, Mike. It does seem like defense travels. If you have really good defense, you can do better on the road than a team that has, like a mediocre defense. It does seem like that helps. But also, like, Jack Drury came in there and he scored his first NHL goal. And it's funny because I've seen him play a lot. And he's never the fastest guy on the ice. He's not the strongest guy on the ice. He's not the most talented guy on the ice. He's none of those things. But he does have a great hockey IQ, and he has a really good shot. And he always seems to be in position for at least a couple chances every game I see him. So it's Ted's kid, just for people that are wondering. And he's really good. I mean, this is another case where if you have a nice structured system, you can bring up some young talent like that, and they can succeed because, again, they have a structured system.
It was a Drury type goal too. Shot, save, rebound, goal, Drury.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times did Chris Drury do that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And of course, I'll never hesitate to talk about the Leafs. They're tied with Tampa right now with 42 points. Had a little bit of a blip the last few games. I think they were starting to get a little loose defensively. They miss Mitch Marner, but not as much, I think, as you think, because they miss Mitch Marner in areas where you wouldn't think, like penalty killing. I mean, their penalty killing he's an excellent penalty killer, and they've had tough time replacing him. But Austin Matthews, like he has turned it up to another gear lately without Marner. Now he's probably going to have to do that again with Tavares out probably the next 10 days.
Yeah, I think he's got the best hands when somebody is down low and you need a goal. That's why I've always brought up like Esposito, because he always had those hands. But he's also got a great deceptive shot. And that's something where you would think goalies would say, hey, I know he's going to do this. But the thing is, he changes it too. It's not like the same move all the time. He's smart enough to know that. So I think it's great. I do think he is probably the most dangerous goal scorer now. I know everybody wants to say Ovechkin because he gets his points, but Ovechkin does still get a lot of points on the power play. And I think Matthews late in the game is more dangerous than an Ovechkin, honestly.
And with Kerfoot and Tavares out, Jason Spezza steps back in the lineup after his suspension was reduced from 6 games to 4 games. Kev, they were talking about this. It was the first time in 7 years that Gary Bettman has reduced a suspension without going to an arbitrator. It's like, I think the last one they said was, it was either Rafi Torres or Daniel Carcillo. It was Daniel Carcillo. So normally he sticks with his Department of Player Safety and whatever they decide. But I tried to look at it in an unbiased manner. I thought that's he maybe deserved to be suspended a couple games, but he got in the end it got suspended 4, and it was just the slow crawl of the appeal process that they waited until he had sat out for 4 games, and then we're going to reduce it to 4. It just how about the appeal be heard right away so you can get a clarification instead of waiting until he serves the 4 games until you reduce it to the 4 games.
Well, it is interesting. I always like reading Bettman's rationale for his appeals. Like, you remember then that he was known as a pretty highly regarded lawyer when you read those appeals that he does and the rulings. I mean, the legalese and the logic applied to it. It's really amazing when you read them. So I recommend if anyone posted online to read it, because you'll see kind of the way Bettman thinks. He's a pretty sharp guy when it comes to the law. But I agree with you on. I thought it was too long. The punishment didn't fit the crime, essentially. I'm glad that Bettman made the right decision because that costs guys money. So, in this plus he'll be back on the ice.
Okay.
It does show that he looks at things and treats things differently, and that's good too. That it's just not all ever set in stone, and that's good for the league.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, we'll see how the weekend progresses. We'll see if there are any more shutdowns. We'll be back on Monday to discuss that. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Russ. For Kevin Allen, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.